Welcome to the Programmes Dialogue. This is a series of events in preparation of the Clean Energy Transition Partnership, one of the partnerships under preparation for Horizon Europe, the new framework program for research and development. This series of events is facilitating a dialogue between ERA-NETs with their successful formats and with their experiences of the last 10 years and national program owners and program managers. The event series is hosted by the joint programming platform Smart Energy Systems. Please be aware that the events are provided on our YouTube channel as a live stream and as a recording, resulting in the fact that whatever you contribute in the chat or via live talk will be public. The Clean Energy Transition Partnership is going to be a transnational joint programming initiative to boost and accelerate the energy transition, building upon regional and national RDI funding programs. Therefore, the Programmes Dialogue intends to create joint knowledge about the most powerful and successful formats and tools to promote research, technology development, and innovation. In a mutual learning and capacity building exercise, we want to learn about good practices, successful activities, effective approaches, but also about the things we tried to do and that did not work out. For this, we want to create together with you an open and interactive atmosphere. The dialogue events are organized in a SureFix mode every Friday at 11 a.m. on this YouTube channel. Each event will present one or a group of initiatives, and we have already a dense schedule until mid-March. However, if you want to present your program or initiative and you are not on the list yet, please let us know and we will find a slot for you. Each of the events will have the same format of presentation blocks of about 10 to 15 minutes, highlighting a specific topic or aspect, followed by a question and answer and discussion session of about 10 minutes. If you have a question, please use the chat function in the YouTube channel. We will bring it up. You want to get on stage and discuss live with the speakers? Send your request in the chat. We will bring you up on stage. The process to develop the Clean Energy Transition Partnership has come a long way. We have started with a stakeholder groups dialogue with all the SETPlan initiatives and ERA-NETs, developing thematic RDI challenges in spring and summer last year. Based on these inputs in a country's dialogue, the Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda was developed and launched in a SETPlan conference side event in November 2020. Now we want to bring together all the partners, funding institutions, ministries, program managers and program owners that are ready to contribute to the implementation of this new joint programming initiative. The number of countries and regions joining has been growing and growing over the last months, and there are still new partners coming on board. A great core team of enthusiastic experts from different organizations all over Europe is committed to bring this initiative forward. Enjoy the Programmes Dialogue, and now let us introduce the speakers of today.
Yes, hello everyone. Welcome to our fifth event of our event series on the exchange of experiences from the ERA-NETs in preparation of the Clean Energy Transition Partnership. Today, our initiative that we are going to present is OCEANERA-NET, and I welcome our speakers. That is the coordinator of OCEANERA-NET, Karen Fraser from Scottish Enterprise, Patricia Comiskey from Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland, and Lotta Pirttima from ETIP Ocean, so that's the European Technology and Innovation Platform on Ocean Energy. Welcome to our speakers. Great to have you today. I also welcome my co-moderators, that is Gerdy Brembroek from the Netherlands Enterprise Agency and Fredrik Lundström from the Swedish Energy Agency. Hi, Fredrik and Gerdy, good to have you on board, and thank you to our great regie team that's managing the studio. That is Nicolas Reschen from the Austrian Ministry of Climate Action, together with Dirk Kukert from Thornberg Eschweiler, helping and supporting with the technology aspects and the studio. So great to have this initiative on our agenda today. I recognize that we have a technical problem with Karen, I think, as a speaker. Oh, she's back again. Very good. So we can directly, I think, jump into the first session. But before we do that, maybe a very brief introduction of the speakers of the first session. That is Patricia and Lotta, if I read correctly. And the first session will be about, okay, where did this initiative, the OCEANERA-NET, in origin in, how did it evolve, how came it, and how is it organized in general? So give us an overview and the full picture of the initiative. So hi, Patricia and Lotta, and also Karin. Maybe Patricia and Lotta, as you are the speakers of the first session, a little bit of your institutional background and your roles in the initiative. Maybe starting with Patricia, or how you want.
Good morning, thank you. Yeah, my name is Patricia Comiskey. I work with Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland, and I'm the program manager for offshore energy there. I have been working with Karen. Karen has been leading on the OCEANERA-NET project for the last number of years. And she has been leading us on the OCEANERA-NET project, but I've also been working to lead on the Ocean CET project, which supports the CET plan implementation.
Right, so you are the link to the whole European environment. Very good.
Correct.
Hello, everybody. I can't hear anything. I don't know if you can hear.
We can hear you, Karen. It's unfortunate that you cannot hear us for the moment. So maybe, but we go on.
Okay, I got a message to say that you can hear me. So I think, is it my turn to speak now?
Yes, Karen,
okay,
please
sorry
start
about that.
your
I'm
presentation.
having some technical issues. So, hi, as you probably know now, I'm Karen Fraser from Enterprise. We coordinate the Ocean Energy-Euronet projects. So I'm going to talk you through today just some of our experiences in the Euronet and in the sector, and my colleagues from Sustainable Energy Ireland and Ocean Energy Europe are going to join me later to talk a bit about the kind of partnership that's going up around the Euronet. And Patricia is going to work the slides for me because I've technical problems.
It's working.
I've also turned down the volume because I think there's an echo. Okay, so Patricia, if you'd like to just move the slide down for me. Yeah, so the first bit, I'm going to just talk a little bit about the history of the Euronet and how it's developed and some of our main results, and then we'll talk in a bit more detail about how we implemented the calls and other activities as well. So again, Patricia, if you can move down. So yes, so OCEANERA-NET started in 2013. It started, we've had 2 rounds basically of OCEANERA-NET. So in 2017, we moved into the co-fund model. And the slide really is just to illustrate the partnership that we have. It's a fairly small ERA-NET. I think that's because it's focused on quite a specific sector. And also, most of the partners today have been people with a sort of strong interest in ocean energy because they have good wave and tidal resources on their coastlines. So they see that as a particular opportunity for energy and economic development. So you can see that we've got a mix of national and regional partners, particularly the regional partners in this ERA-NET are very strong. They are the ones who have got a real interest in developing ocean energy in their areas. The partners, we have some of the national research programmes like CDTI in Spain and FCT in Portugal, but mainly the partners are either economic development agencies like my own organisation or energy agencies in Ireland and Sweden. So a slightly different mix to some of the other ERA-NET programmes, I think. What we've seen when we moved to the co-fund model is it was just at a time when some of the member states were, put it the right way, they had a little bit less interest in ocean energy. They were very focused on meeting targets and you know, getting renewables to market quickly. So there was a bit of a switch in interest, particularly to offshore wind. So we lost some of the, particularly the UK and France at national level. But we brought in Brittany and Pays de la Loire in France, who have got a very strong interest in the sector, so that gave us back some balance. And as you can see, I've been the coordinator for both the initiatives. You can click on, Patricia. Thanks. So when we started, I suppose I started developing around about 2010, but just in the sort of early parts of the century, I suppose, when we look at it that way. The ocean energy sector was just really starting to develop into something that people were taking seriously. There'd been a lot of, you know, work done, pioneering work in universities and prototype sort of, but it was, you know, it was a long way from mainstream. So we started to see things like national programmes being developed, particularly I think in Scotland was probably the first, but also in Sweden and Ireland and some other places. And also the European Union started to recognise ocean energy because of its huge potential to generate electricity. So that, you know, the power that's in the seas is very significant and could contribute a big proportion of our energy needs if we can find the cost-effective solutions. But it was a new sector, very SME-driven, long way from markets. We're starting to build up European partnerships using Interreg. The ERA had been established, Ocean Energy Europe was building up steam, and really the ERA-NET was seen as a good way to bring together some collaboration and help to move the sector along. So we started to see Ocean Energy in Horizon 2020 and specifically the ERA-NET call. Okay, Patricia, if you can flick down. Okay, so I'm realising already I might be short of time. So we started as a very new partnership. We didn't really know each other very well. So what we did was we did a lot of work really to try and build a common agenda. We had a strong advisory group at the time, drawing on the sort of main players at international and European level. And we did a lot of activity just to establish the agenda, both for us as a partnership, but also to engage with the stakeholders, so we were all working to the same agenda. So we did a lot of work on identifying the challenges for the sector and developing the action plans, vision and so on for moving forward. And then during the first year in NET, the Ocean Energy Forum was established. It developed a strategic roadmap which sets new priorities, and we were very engaged in that process as well. Okay, next slide. So yeah, just in this context, I'll just say a little bit about the call topics and the research that we were aiming to fund at this stage. It didn't change much over the 4 calls. We had analysed sort of the main needs of the sector, and we stuck with those topics more or less for the 4 calls that we've run. So ocean energy devices, but also looking at all sort of components and subsystems and other parts that are needed to make up the device and the energy system. Also the very important issue offshore installation and operations, and looking at the actual wave and tidal resource and impacts. So sticking to those topics gave us quite a lot of flexibility. It allowed the projects, the companies, to develop projects that were complementary to what they might have done for another EU call or a national call. So it gave them the scope to pick up on other areas that they needed to develop in parallel. Next slide, please, Patricia. So that we supported a wide range of projects. We supported a number of wave energy devices at different stages of their development. Things like core power from Sweden, Laminaria from Belgium, and so on. Some of those wave devices we funded twice, so they've moved on to the next TRL, the next stage, and we funded them again to keep that continuity. And we've supported quite a few projects looking at how they integrate into local energy systems, which is important for the sector. And again, quite a lot of stuff on the key components, materials, foundations and anchoring and mooring are very important. We've also funded some projects that have developed resources for the sector. So a whole sort of toolbox for looking at reliability. A lot of work going on just now on resource assessment and mapping and providing tools for that, and on the market and economic position for ocean energy. Okay, Patricia, next one. So just things that I just wanted to sort of touch on the things that have worked well in terms of the calls, but I can come back to that in more detail in the next session. But as I said, we've supported a lot of WECs, got really good experience of the technology developers working together with the supply chain and also with each other on common issues, which I think has really helped the sector. That complements the bigger Horizon 2020 calls and projects. So we've got examples of a big demonstration project in Tyrol being funded by Horizon 2020, but we are providing extra support with the blades and the blade pitching mechanism. Some of this is I've already covered. I suppose that energy systems bit has been important. We've got a really engaged community of SMEs that work together a lot and work with us a lot and come along to our events and talk to each other, which I think really helps. And the regional dimension is important in this ERA-NET, sort of building on the local clusters in the different regions. So that was the sort of quick run through of OCEANERA-NET and our sort of history and what we've done. So I think that's the end of part 1. So I'll stop there.
Great, Karen. Thanks a lot for this first
and I'll put my volume back up so I can hear any questions.
And overview. So I hope you can hear me now so that we can...
Okay, so I still can't hear anything. I don't know what's happened.
Oh, that's a pity. I will try to put something in the chat.
So if there's any questions at this stage, yeah, if you can type them into the chat for me. Otherwise, we can move on
what
to
I want to ask to Karen is that you're coming from an interesting
Michael's asking
organization.
Me a question about Scottish Enterprise.
Yeah, that's Scottish Enterprise.
So Yeah, I can explain a bit about us and how we got involved. So Scottish Enterprise is the main economic agency of the Scottish Government. So, you know, we think it was the national government, but the regional government in Scotland. We have a sister organisation in the Highlands and Islands in the north of Scotland, and we work together on that. For the ERA-NET, particularly the co-funded call, we had extra funding provided by the Scottish Government because they saw this as a big priority, and we were able to run that call across the whole of Scotland. So our job is basically to look at economic development opportunities, develop sectors, support companies, support innovation, all really to, you know, create wealth and jobs and opportunities. But we've also now got a very strong objective of supporting the government's ambitions in terms of net zero and climate change. And that is driving a lot of the activity that we do now. So we're trying to focus on how we can contribute to, you know, increasing renewables, reducing carbon emissions, but also how we get economic opportunities out of that. How we develop Scottish companies to create more jobs. We've also got a strong interest in working in European projects. So back just before the ERA-NET started, we set up something called the Scottish European Green Energy Centre. And that did a lot of the work actually to develop the interest in ocean energy and the Ocean Energy Project. So it's a team of people whose job it was to go and look for European opportunities to support our agenda. And we're also involved in some other ERA-NETs, primarily in smart energy systems and Ener-Digits. We're involved in aquatic pollutants, and we're talking to Positive Energy Districts Consortium about coal, and we're quite keen to be involved in the new partnership as we go forward.
Another question, Karen, I will put it into the chat.
Okay, yeah, somebody's asked about collaboration between the ERA-NET and the CETP Plan Implementation Working Group on Ocean Energy. We're actually going to cover that in the session later on. Patricia is going to talk about that. But can I just say, I mean, I've been a member of the CETP Plan group, sort of representing partly Scotland, but mainly representing Ocean ERA-NET and the partners in Ocean ERA-NET. And we've worked together to develop the action plan out the CETP plan and the targets. And we continue to work together to sort of try and coordinate activity and make the most of all the resources we have towards developing the sector.
So we're going to talk about this, I think, later in the session.
And Carl's asking about the other participating organisations. So, as I said, there's a mixture. We have FCT and CDTI, as many of you will know, are sort of national research programmes agencies which participate in a lot of ERA-NETs across a wide range of technology areas. And then we have, more specifically, we have in Sweden and Ireland the energy agencies. So their remit is development of the renewable energy sector. And then we have the regions. Really, in the regions, yeah, it is unusual to have an ERA-NET of regions. It's largely to do with the way where the sector is most focused at the moment. So, you know, it's obviously coastal areas, and people within Atlantic coasts are going to benefit most from ocean energy in terms of the generation side of it, and also the jobs. Also, we also think that, you know, there are much wider benefits potentially in Europe for other countries in terms of the supply chain as the sector starts to scale up. And there'll be a lot of opportunity there for the supply chain as well. And we'd like to get more people involved in the future in ocean energy. Good example of that, I guess, is Flanders, who have been a partner in the first ERA-NET and participated in the call for the second ERA-NET, but not weren't actually a partner. And their interest is primarily because they've got a very strong engineering supply chain that sees opportunities in ocean energy.
Thank you very much, Karen.
I think having a partnership with regions had some challenges for me, particularly in the co-fund, because the partners weren't all very experienced in ERA-NETs. I had no experience of ERA-NETs. I had to learn everything, and I'm forever grateful to my partners who you know, provided all that support. But so it's been a sort of learning curve. It's been interesting. Some of our regional partners are regional councils, and they have a very different sort of approach to how they do things and how they make decisions because of political organisations. So it's been quite fun.
I can imagine. Okay, thank you very much, Karen. Let's move to the second part of the presentation.
Okay, I think we're going to move on to part 2 now and talk about in more detail about the calls. So if you could just move down, Patricia, thanks. So I've basically the slides that I'm using are for the co-funded call. But we've used basically the same process for the 4 calls that we've operated. So I thought it was easy just to illustrate with one. So the co-funded call, so the objectives of the call were really very much based around the needs of the sector and the results of the Ocean Forum and the strategic work that was going on in partnership. So a lot about improving the performance, reliability and survivability in the sea of ocean energy devices. Cost reduction is really, really important. We're really making big strides with that now, but there's still quite a way to go before ocean energy becomes competitive, particularly because there's been such a big reduction in offshore wind. We need to catch up with that so we can actually look at real commercial developments of the technology. And as I said, common challenges, looking at solutions to common challenges and getting people working together on those. Also trying to get some transfer of experience in from other sectors, which we have done to some extent. And also to develop the supply chain around ocean energy by engaging them in the projects. Okay, Patricia. So the call topics I don't really need to go through again, but I just put them in to remind me. So the call topics sort of reflect the objectives, and as I said, we've kept them fairly consistent to allow the broadest sort of range of projects rather than trying to target too much. It seems to be the best approach for the sector. So next one, Patricia, please. So yeah, the co-funded call in particular was for demonstration projects. In the other calls, we did have a bit more flexibility for lower TRLs. As with most ERA-NETs, I think although we were asking the projects to go, as you see, from 4 to 6 to 6 to 8, we did allow some other research activities in the projects. So you know, we were looking for them to be moving up to the next step really, and demonstrating some prototypes at a reasonable scale to move on the sector. Next slide, please. So yeah, just to give an idea of the funding, I'll sort of take through how the call worked in terms of the funding and how we distributed it. So we had a budget of 17 million, which was really ambitious. It was a lot of money for us, a lot of money for the sector to potentially absorb, and we'll come back to that later. But it showed this sort of real level of commitment from the agencies to to this call and to what we were doing. These figures include the European money, so that was 33% added on to each of our national budgets, but that was our total budget that we had available. Next one, please, Patricia. So in terms of the timeline, we had a basic two-step procedure. I guess there's slight variations in all the different ERANETs, but obviously the two-step is compulsory for a co-fund. So yeah, and we did quite a lot of promotion as well. We did a webinar, but we also had 2 physical events at 2 conferences, which were fortunately happening around the same time the call opened. And we had brokerage for those with Enterprise Europe Network. So, access to a website prior to set up meetings and organise brokerage sessions. I think that was really helpful as well. One in France and one in Spain. So then at step 1, we had a pre-proposal, which was a reasonably detailed proposal. It was more than an expression of interest, so it was to gather enough information for us to really understand the project and the partners, so that we could make decisions on which ones to go forward. So we're doing an eligibility check. We didn't do a formal evaluation at that stage, but we, as I said, we tried to get enough information to let the funding agencies do their analysis of whether they wanted to support the project. And then obviously the full proposal, and the project starting just, about 9-10 months later. So that didn't actually happen in reality, but I'll come back to that. Next slide, please. So the evaluation process, as I said, at step 1, it was just national and regional eligibility checks. I don't think any of the partners actually did a national evaluation. Now, I'm not absolutely sure about that, but I think it was more eligibility. And then step 2 is the evaluation by independent experts according to the sort of standard criteria, which we're all familiar with. In fact, most people will be familiar with all of this because it's a fairly standard model. The evaluation, 3 reviewers per project, rapporteur to coordinate that, consensus score, then the evaluation panel, and some moderation of scores and the final ranking list. The evaluation panel was made up of nominations primarily from the ERANET partners, and we had actually quite a lot of continuity, 3 or 4 calls with some of the evaluators and the chair of the panel, which I think was really helpful, because it meant they had a good understanding of what the ERANET was all about, and they also knew about the past projects, so they were in a good position to spot if something was really duplicating something that had already been done. Just a small panel because of the relatively small number of applications. I think it worked very well together to make sure that there were no inconsistencies in the scoring and really iron out that so that we got a good ranking list. Next, please, Patricia. So, just talk about the numbers. So, at step 1, we had 27 pre-proposals requesting 43, nearly 44 million compared with 17 million. We were quite surprised by that. It was a lot of projects, but there was quite a few of them were actually ineligible for one reason or another. So we decided to invite 18 of them to the second stage. So there was quite a bit oversubscription. We kind of looked at it both at the oversubscription, if you include the European money and the oversubscription on your own budget. So it was up at nearly 4, and for Scottish enterprise, despite the big budget we had a high oversubscription rate. And I think it reflected the fact that a lot of the leading development companies in the sector were in Scotland. But we decided to invite them all to this next stage. Part of the reason for doing that was that we had a lot of very ambitious projects, quite big projects, also things like 2 developers working together in one big mega project. And we had some reservations about the ability to implement some of them, and also the ability to match fund them, because they were looking for a lot of money, but they would have to provide a lot of money. So we decided to let all the eligible projects go through in anticipation that there might be some drop off, and if there wasn't, then we would still have a lot of good projects. So next slide, please, Patricia. So, and we were right, because at stage 2, 13 came back with full proposals. So there were a few dropped off because they couldn't actually make the partnership and the funding work. We had to pull one out because we had some concerns about the eligibility of the company. So the oversubscription fell quite a bit. We evaluated 12, 10 on the ranking list, and 9 of the projects eventually went ahead. There was one project fell after approval because unfortunately the company actually went out of business. It was quite a high profile failure, if I can use that word, of one of the tidal companies. So we actually ended up with a situation where we didn't have any gap filling. We were actually able to fund everything with the budgets that were available and the commission money. I was a little bit disappointed because I was looking forward to having to do the gap filling exercise, because I thought that would be quite interesting, but it didn't happen. So, but it was good. So we got 9 projects funded, and they're all going well, and there've been delays due to COVID, but they're all doing good work and producing results that I think are going to be really valuable for the sector. So just the last slide, Patricia, I think it's the last one, yeah. So just some thoughts on that process. We didn't do evaluation at stage 1. We didn't think that would be necessary, but I think in calls where there's larger numbers and more projects to look at, there's merit in doing evaluation at stage 1. It gives you a more independent view on which projects can go forward. But we felt that we had enough information from the pre-proposals to assess the projects and let them go forward. We deliberately tried to do that in the templates to get the information the funding organisations needed to do their national approvals and national evaluations. And as I've already said, there's some very ambitious demonstration projects, hence the decision for the allowed oversubscription. And we did have a lot of projects fell off because the partnership problems, match funding, and so on. So that's kind of the story of the co-funded call. The other calls, the 3 sort of non-co-funded calls, were very similar in terms of the processes, and not the same dramatic drop off of numbers. In fact, for our last call, the second call under the co-funds, we actually had less demand than we thought we would have. We only funded 4 projects, which is a bit disappointing. I think that may have just been because there was so much else going on, and they had already had still projects running from the co-funded call, probably affected the demand. So I'll stop there. Any questions? Also, Patricia. he's also a member of our consortium. If you want to add, feel free.
So thank you, Karen, for this part of the presentation. As it is a little bit difficult in the conversation now with Karen because she cannot hear us, maybe we start with the first round where I ask our co-moderators and the co-presenters if they have any observations on what Karen has presented so far. If you want to comment on this a little bit. And at the same time, we are asking for questions from the chat that we could maybe take into account.
Michael, I'd be happy to make some comments on the program and on Karen's presentation, if that
yes, please.
helpful.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So we are a partner on the OCEANERA-NET as well, and with Karen leading. And it's yeah, I absolutely agree with the comments that she has made in her presentation. We found the process really, useful to follow through on the different stages of evaluation. But I suppose similar, there is kind of a constant, I suppose, maybe tension between kind of how much information the national administrators look at the early stages of projects, and how much, kind of evaluation is done, detailed evaluation is done at that stage. What we've found is that at times, I think we've struck a good balance, because what we don't want to do is delay that whole evaluation process. So we want to bring, get projects through the various stages and understand what is successful and what's going to meet our requirements. But there is oftentimes, once projects are evaluated by ERANET, there are times that the contractual negotiations at a member state level can sometimes take a little bit longer than we would have hoped for. So that is something that, like for future programs, I think we should look at how we can streamline some of that. I definitely think that the fact that we've gone through a number of iterations at this stage has helped Karen and the team, the ERANET team, hone better processes and understand, make better decisions on what we believe could be successful, and get it through the various stages of evaluation. So that's been really useful. The experience that has built up within this partnership has been really successful in getting some really good projects through. And when I was looking at the data that we're collecting under the OCEANERA project, which looks at data right across our projects right across Europe, we're seeing some really tangible results coming through from the ERANET support. So which is really good to see.
Thanks for this. Any other comments from the team?
Yeah, I have actually a question. Thanks, Patricia, and thanks, Karen, also for a great presentation. I want to dig maybe a little bit deeper into, you said, Patricia, about the contracting phase of the projects, and I assume this also involves for them to set up their consortium agreement and this part. I think this is an important thing that I am sure many of us working with other ERANETs have also observed. It's always difficult sometimes, and I guess if it's huge demonstration projects, it might be even more complicated. Do you have any key takeaways of both if there are some things that this has worked well, how you could support them, and or if you have some takeaways on things that there's a need to develop, for instance, a better support to them, how they set up these contracts, or how ERANET can help the project with that process?
I think if, as you say, we look at the lessons learned, and maybe we can hone some of the processes so that within the regional authority or the national authority that is co-funding the project, that there's a clear understanding of the requirements of what's needed, and there's timelines set for some of those contractual arrangements to be made. I think it's always useful to work to a deadline. So having maybe a mechanism where each of the national authorities are working to a certain deadline to get the projects across the line, once they have been approved from a technical perspective, I think that would be really useful. I also think I mean, on the other side, like we have had issues where Karen mentioned, we've had, say, companies or projects have gotten through the technical evaluations, and then there's been issues from an eligibility point of view, say, at a national level, and where companies may, for instance, go bankrupt or whatever it may be. And what we've looked to do in those situations, rather than lose the project, is to say, okay, how can we be flexible to support the other partners within that project? And that flexibility, and so I suppose we need to find a balance between being structured and how we do things, but also to allow for flexibility in some of these projects. And as a result of the good working relationship between the partners, we have been able to work to find solutions for projects where there's been unforeseen challenges like that. So I suppose it's finding that balance.
Thank you very much. Very interesting to hear.
Yes, we have still some time to go for the talk session. So if you have any more topics, we can take them.
Yes, I would be interested to hear a bit more about the pre-proposal stage and how you worked with that. How did the national or the regional organizations look at those proposals? Did they focus on the eligibility, or was that a broader evaluation that you were doing?
Yeah, I suppose it was a pretty broad evaluation that was done. So obviously, when the calls went out and the first applications came in, I suppose that there was a sense check on, okay, first of all, does it fulfill the criteria of what we're trying to do? How, like, again, as Karen said, is it replicating any work that's already out there, or is this sufficiently novel? The other thing we also looked at is, where it complements other projects. And as Karen mentioned, we've definitely seen a benefit in that, where these projects can complement either current ongoing projects or lead to other larger projects. So we looked at that. We also looked at a general level, the eligibility, but not kind of the detail eligibility. So say, for instance, we didn't look at the breakdowns of the budgets and kind of, when you go and look into, say, for the eventual contractual arrangement, some of how the budget had been allocated and what was eligible under the rules and what wasn't. So some of that detailed breakdown wasn't done at that stage. So generally in that first stage, it was looking at, okay, does this fit with our criteria? Is it the type of project that we'd like to see moving on? Those kind of checks were done.
Very good. Still some time to go if we want. I don't see any questions from the chat at the moment. Nicholas, same observation, or did I miss something? Oh yeah, we have something. Which countries come your evaluators from? Yeah, assuming that all OCEANERA-NET countries are already in the network, that's a really good question. So where do you get the experts to evaluate the projects from? Because mainly all of the experts would be expected to work in the projects.
Yeah, so I suppose
outside Europe, or
there's a panel of experts that's used for the technical evaluation, and that's selected. And there was a call for those panel of experts, and generally these would be from within. I'm just trying to think were any of them external. They're from within Europe, and within they would have a very good understanding of the sector. They don't necessarily have to be within the ERANET partnership. So we would have brought in external technical expertise. And then within the ERANET project, I suppose the partnership was, as Karen noted, we have both national representatives and regional representatives within the partnership. So I suppose the ERANET partnership is based on the organisations that can commit to the funding element of the project. So I suppose that is part of the challenge, as Karen mentioned earlier on in her presentation, getting the appropriate agencies working together and those that commit to underpinning the fund.
Great. Thanks a lot. I think now the questions are coming from the chat. That's cool. So we take another one. Yeah. Ambitious targets are set in the strategy for ocean. I couldn't get the first one.
Yeah, I think it's around the target. Oh, sorry, here it is again. Yeah. So that the targets within the offshore strategy.
Can you hear me?
Karen, can you hear us?
So Karen, do you want to comment on this question?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah. These are the questions from Matthias about the CETP, I'll answer the questions about the CETP probably. Yeah, I mean, I think the targets that are set for ocean energy are ambitious and stretching, and there's a lot of continued support needed to get to those targets. And I think I would certainly hope we'll be able to carry that through into the CETP, and also hope that we can engage more countries in calls on ocean energy to bring in some of the expertise and supply chain companies that's available in other countries, and really see this as a big opportunity for ocean energy, both to supply renewables to the European grid, but also to create a lot of jobs in what can become a global industry. And I think the focus on trying to build the European industry as we get closer and closer to sort of real commercial projects. We have a danger, as a lot of people will know, of at the moment a lot of activity is moving to Canada and other places offer more subsidy, and we have to find ways of making sure that they come back to Europe to really scale up. There's also a question about the regions and the CETP. So I've certainly been keeping our regional partners, advised of the developments, and we've actually got some discussions coming up with Ocean Energy Europe and ETIP organising them sort of roundtables with the funders as well. Certainly, Scottish
Karen, can we
Enterprise.
work on getting the regions that you have? Can we work on getting them on board for the partnership?
Yeah,
I think that would be
that's what
beneficial.
we're looking at the moment. We're speaking to them coming up 2 weeks' time, a sort of round table to talk about that. I know from France that I think the French agencies are taking the lead just now, but the regions are keeping engaged, and they're not sure if they will come in as partners in the early proposal, but they're hoping they can get involved in calls in the future once it's set up.
But why do you think there is a hurdle to get them in as partners, as we have other regions also involved in the partnership?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think I'd have to ask them more about that. I'll be able to tell you more about that. I think it's partly just being able to get the commitment to get involved early, and also because some of them have got more specific interests as well. So, I think it depends on how it goes with ocean energy and if there's going to be good calls that they can get involved in. But yeah, they're definitely interested. So.
Yes, because I think it's important we have them also when we define the calls, because otherwise the topics will not be there that they want to see. And I think then it's always possible, because if the topics come on the agenda, come on the table, then we can have them in the call, definitely, if there are partners that are interested in. Otherwise, if they are not involved in the processes before, and as they would not be involved as a full partner, it could become hard, you know, to get these topics in the scoping, because who would then raise them?
Yeah,
So, but
yeah.
maybe let's talk about this even more, how we could get them in. For the moment, I think, and thanks, Matthijs, for the good questions, we would move over to the next block of presentation, and that is dealing with how is knowledge exchange organized in this network, and what other joint activities beyond the joint calls are implemented. And it's again Karen that will present this to us. Please, Karen, the floor is yours.
Okay, we can just move to the slide, Patricia. So I'm conscious that our European Commission officer is on the call, but we have been struggling a little bit with implementing joint activities in the current co-fund, apart from the additional joint call. But I'll come back to that. The slide I've got up is it's largely activity that was done under OCEANERA-NET, and we had a lot of good activity there. Really engaging with the companies and the sort of wider sector. That was largely based around face-to-face activity, where we, were able to get either groups of companies or groups of the funded projects together in one room, able to share on a private and confidential basis what they were doing. And I think everybody got a lot of benefit out of that. And we used, for example, the final conference to work on ideas for the future in what we called an unconference workshop, where the participants developed the agenda. But most of our activity was very focused, and is still focused on events, which is probably a bit of a weakness at the moment because of the current situation. We also worked on activities that were kind of really developing tools for the sector, and providing information and the resources that the sector could use. Something that's missing from there, maybe it's on the next slide. Can we move to the next slide, Patricia? Thanks. The thing that I think is missing from the slides is we also did a lot of work with Wave Energy Scotland joined the OCEANERA-NET, and did a lot of work as part of that on developing the approach to stage gate metrics, which is something that Wave Energy Scotland uses, but through the ERANET funding and working with sort of wider partnership and the International Energy Agency, we did 2 workshops and 2 reports, really developing the whole concept of stage gate metrics, defining what the metrics would be for sort of moving to the next stage of the project, and thinking about how we could use that in future funding calls. It wasn't something we could really do with a co-funded call, because that's got a fairly sort of strict process involved, but it's something that I guess has been picked up with the new Europe Wave project, which will be a procurement project, and something we could look at in the new partnership as well, as alternative ways of funding and developing projects through the stages. At the moment, in OCEANERA co-fund, I'm being honest here because I think that's the best thing. We've struggled a little bit because we've not had any physical events this year, and we're now just looking at what we can do next year, more online this year, sorry, in 2021, more online activity. We've been doing some surveys with the applicants. We're going to do some other work like that, just to try and build up information for going forward. One of the things I think has hindered us in a way is that we didn't build anything similar to Smart Energy Systems platform, which, you know, is the basis for all the kind of knowledge exchange activity. So as well as having meetings and events, you've also got that bank of knowledge that people can access. We haven't built anything like that, and that sort of limits us then to really doing it through events and documents and things that we can put on the website. So knowledge exchange is something we want to really kind of focus on, trying to do more activity around this year and for the sort of remaining 6 months of the projects, to really make sure we're maximising the results from the projects. All the projects are quite well advanced now. Some are pretty much finished, so there's a lot of good work there that we need to look at ways that we can get that information out. Okay, Patricia, do you want to move down? Yeah, so we were just looking, as I said, we're looking at doing a programme of webinars and online workshops. And then we've got the activity around the CETPs. So we've arranged a round table meeting, which is coming up, and then we'd like to look at maybe doing some sort of workshop activity around what are the for ocean energy going into the CETP, how we can best benefit from that. Is that just by making sure that there's ocean energy calls in there, or can we look at some of the cross-cutting issues, look at combined work that can be done on offshore renewables and all the challenges around that? So that's really where we're kind of starting to focus now as well, is trying to build for the future. So really that's all I had to say, because we've struggled a little bit, as I said, with knowledge exchange, but we're learning from others, particularly from my involvement in smart energy systems, and looking to increase our activity this year.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. Any comments from the presenters at this time? Or do we have questions from our co-moderators?
Michael, could I make a point?
Please.
Yeah, I agree with Karen. It's a struggle, especially in the current situation, to engage with the sector and with SMEs. And there are a number of projects that are out there which are looking to do that. And Karen and myself are involved in another one called Open, which is actually an Interreg funded project, which looks to engage the SMEs in this sector and kind of drive collaboration within it. So I suppose what we need to balance is, ensuring networking, engaging, but also trying to prevent, I suppose, exhaustion on, when it comes to this type of engagement. It is quite challenging. So we need to make sure we're not duplicating effort or are doing things for the sake of them. I do think there's been some really useful events run by the OCEANERA-NET, but what we possibly need to look at is that we combine efforts and activities so that we're, again, not duplicating or exhausting people.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting aspect or important aspect that we also have. I mean, last time we presented the joint programming platform on smart energy systems, and here we also have this attempt to join and find synergies, because at the end all these groups on the SEPLAN level are approaching the same experts, the same people, and it's important to use the synergies, of course. And I think this is something that we should also keep as a culture when we move into the Clean Energy Transition Partnership, to make sure that the different topics are well connected to the existing platforms and initiatives in this field that are out there in the SETPLAN. We've already started in the concept to build these links, and I think it's important also in this field that we keep on going with this. Do we have any questions? If not, if you or formulate your questions, I just pick up an aspect that was in the chat before I forget, because there was a question: how could regions that are interested come on board now for the initiative. And I think there is enough time still and everything open and open doors to come on board. So any partners from the OCEANERA-NET or other regions that would be interested to join the Clean Energy Transition Partnership, please contact us. We will onboard you. This is not a problem. I think we have, as I said, already in some countries, some regions that are participating also as a region in the network, and that's definitely possible. And we will find ways to organize that. Please feel free to contact us, and we will give you the instructions what we need from your side. Yeah, do we have any other questions regarding the presentation block that we had now? Otherwise, I would propose to move over to the next session. And the next session is now presented. Yeah, I have again Karen here on the list, but also as co-presenters Patricia and Lotta. I don't know how you are organized and who is going to start with this, but now it's about partnerships beyond the ERA-NET, or as I would phrase it, as I understood it, how the ERA-NET ocean is embedded in the larger environment of initiatives that are out there in the set plan level, but also maybe beyond. That's what we're going to hear now in this next session. Please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I think I have to start on this, Michael. So I'll get going now. So I think Karen, basically, as you mentioned, she wanted to bring in where there was other working partnerships within the project, and that the fact that there's close links with the ERA-NET partnership, with SETPlan, with ETIP Ocean, which Lotta is leading on, and then also links to the project that I mentioned earlier on, the Ocean Power Innovation Network, which is an Interreg funded project. And all of these events and the experience built over the development of these projects is what we would like to build and input into a strategy for the CETP. So there is an intention to broaden partnerships, and there's interest from international partners with the USA and Canada and Chile and Argentina. But they, like a lot of the development of these partnerships, there's a requirement for long lead-in times and often different types of contractual arrangements between different jurisdictions. Again, a timing issue with the Martira ERA-NET, and there has been an interest from countries, but the potential, it has attracted interest from countries within the significant physical resource, but the potential for supply chain of the global industry of the future of Europe is wide. There's also been opportunities to work with other renewables on shared challenges. So again, looking at where we can complement activities rather than replicate or duplicate activities.
Sorry, Patricia, just for clarification, the Martira ERA-NET, what is it?
Oh, apologies. This is Karen. That was Karen's slide and Karen's lead in. I'm just taking we'll have to ask her when she comes back on. So apologies. She asked me just to take those slides because of her technical difficulties. So I actually don't know. Yeah. Apologies.
Where are we with Karen? Karen, can you hear us? So the question was what Martira ERA-NET is.
Okay.
Yeah. Back. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Hi. What was the question?
Martira ERA-NET, what is it that was mentioned in the presentation now, but maybe not everyone knows what Martira ERA-NET is.
Oh yeah, I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's to do with materials.
So it's materials only for energy related technologies, or is it broader?
I think it's broader, and because we have partners that were in that ERA-NET as well, we thought that we might be a good opportunity to do a call more focused on ocean energy and the sort of materials that might, would be, or include that in their call as a sort of specific topic within the call, but it didn't
See the point. That
that
was just for clarification because
weren't
maybe not
our
everyone knows
partners.
this network.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah.
Yes. So we move on with Patricia, I think.
Yeah, correct. So basically, I just wanted to give a flavour of the work that we're doing in a project called OCEANERA-NET, which is supporting the CET plan implementation plan for ocean energy. And this is a JA2 Horizon 20, H2020 project. So, and there is, as we've mentioned before, good complementary activities with OCEANERA-NET. So I'm sure you're all aware of the Strategic Energy Technology Plan, the CET plan, which was established. There was a declaration of intent for ocean energy, and within that declaration of intent, there was targets for reduction of levelized cost of energy. So bringing them down to 10 cents per kilowatt hour by 2030 for tidal stream and by 2035 for wave. The implementation plan for ocean energy was then written and developed in 2000 and published in 2018. And in order to meet these targets, there was 11 technology development actions set out. And basically, the OCEANERA project was established to support the delivery of these actions and also the delivery of the, or to support the working group for the CET plan implementation plan. So the OCEANERA project, it's a 3-year funded project. It's we're leading it in SCAI in Ireland, and we have 9 partners across Europe working on, I suppose, monitoring activities within Europe which support this sector, and also monitoring our progress within the 11 actions. Basically, what the project has a mechanism to, there's 4 key stages where we basically map the data, we analyze it, we monitor it, and we review it. We do this each year, so there's 3 reports coming out each year to get an understanding of the activities across the member states to support this sector. These are the 11 actions from the implementation plan, and basically we work to map each of them and see where we are within Europe in progressing them. And there was an interesting question from Matthias earlier on around how we integrate now the offshore strategy actions into these implementation plans. So that is something that we need to focus on this year as well. So basically the actions range from the development of supporting technologies down to some of the, say, cross-cutting issues like consenting and accreditation. The initial year of the survey was completed last year, so it was completed in 2019 but looked at 2018, and these were some of the outputs that we have, some of the high-level outputs that we have from the survey. So in 2018 there was 90 projects funded. The funding coming from member states was 26.3 million. And again, we only looked at member state funding in that particular year. There was a number of test facilities that had been identified to support the technology. There were also a number of member states had committed policy development in this area. So basically, in this report, which is published on the website, we pulled out some of the key high-level data, but the report is there to look at in more detail. So our analysis for 2019, we're submitting the reports to the Commission this week, and we plan to have the public report due out in March. But some initial data that we've gathered, and just as a high-level look at some of the data that we've received in, so there's 14 member states within the working group, and of those 13 responded. 3 countries indicated that they have no policy or budget for ocean energy, and they didn't complete the survey. 10 provided data. So from the initial look and analysis from this data, there's a total of 127 projects which were identified in 2019. And this was a mix of both member state funded projects, but also European funded projects. 74 were wave, 24 were tidal, and 29 were categorized as Ocean, which basically looks at support right across the sector rather than just on a specific topic. 9 of them said they funded ocean energy projects of TRL 7 plus in 2019. So that was 25 projects in total. And then what we did was we went on to gather further information from those projects. Again, all of this information will be in a public report that's published in March, but I just wanted to give a sense of some of the information that we've collected. And then with respect to the ERA-NETs, and apologies for the speed, but I'm conscious that Lotte has to speak as well. With respect to the ERA-NETs, this is the projects that were active in 2019. So this gives us a breakdown of the 127 projects. But the total figures that we have here are over the life scale of the project, the lifetimes of the project, rather than in that particular year. So that's just to bear in mind. And these are the types of figures that we are looking at. So there is significant support going into the sector. But when you break down and look down further into the data, a lot of the support is going to the ocean-related projects that I talked about earlier on, which are more about supporting the sector than, say, individual technologies. Again, we're looking to provide more detailed analysis on this and to have it published later next month. But this just gives you, again, a sense of the type of support that's being provided for the projects. And then when we look at the ERA-NET projects in particular, what we found was there was a strong indication of good support in the ERA-NET projects. And what we saw was good collaboration amongst the different member states and the different projects. And we reported on 16 projects in total. And this is basically at that point in 2019, there was 16 projects active. So they may have come from any of the ERA-NET calls, depending on what period in their project they were. There were 31 companies involved in these projects, and the investment, the grant aid investment was 7 million, but the total cost of projects was 11 million. So again, good support and collaboration being built within the industry and the sector by the ERA-NET projects. So I think they really are very, very valuable. And I think that's my last slide, but this basically gives you an indication of the contact points, the partners in the OceanSat project. So anyone can reach out to us and get further information if they require it. But as I say, the report will be published next month and will be available on our website. So Lotte, I'll hand over to you, conscious of the time.
Very good, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Patricia. So hello from me as well. My name is Lotta Pirkimo. I'm a Policy and Project Officer at Ocean Energy Europe, the trade association for ocean energy. And I'm also the manager of ETP Ocean, the European Technology and Innovation Platform for Ocean Energy, which is basically a network of ocean energy professionals and a recognized advisory body for the European Commission and part of the set plan. So we support the implementation working group for ocean energy, mainly through the OceanSat project. And I will now talk a bit about how ocean energy ties with the wider political framework and the specific aspects with regard to the CETP. Next slide, please, Patricia. Thank you. So I wanted to start with this slide to demonstrate how ocean energy is linked with the Green Deal. So I won't go through all of these, but just wanted to mention the most well, let's say, tangible one, of course, the offshore renewable energy strategy that was published in November last year, and in which, for the first time, the EU sets deployment objectives for wave and tidal stream energy, 100 megawatts by 2025, 3 gigawatts by 2030, and so on. And the strategy also establishes this forum that gathers national governments, EU authorities, and the industry to develop the sector together. Next slide, please. And this, for me, is a clear signal that the EU wants to leverage this first mover advantage in ocean energy. Ocean energy is a European sector, it is led by European companies, and it is already based on strong cooperation between countries and regions. So the vast majority of ocean energy deployments are EU projects. Horizon 2020 granted 215 million euros for ocean energy projects. And this again shows that the sector already has that deep cooperation that the CETP promotes as well. As an example, I'd like to mention the new project Europe Wave that started this January. It's a 5-year collaborative program between the Basque Country and Scotland, and it will channel 20 million euros to the most promising wave energy concepts. And for results from earlier EU projects, I put there a picture of the European Commission's Cordis results pack for ocean energy, if you want to check that out. Then next slide, please. When talking about cooperation, of course, ETIP Ocean does that as well. So we bring the sector together, and we have participants from all over Europe and outside of Europe as well, some from the US, Canada, and Australia. And our project partners within ETIP Ocean come from Portugal, Spain, Belgium, and the UK. So our partners are University of Edinburgh, Wavec Offshore Renewables, and Technalia. And yeah, next slide, please. One slide before, I think. Yeah, sorry, yeah, this one. So our publications, as you can see here on the slides, are a result of a sector-wide consultation, and you can see our strategic research and innovation agenda that was used as an input for the CETP SRIA. So we were actively involved with the drafting process as well. And we also published a report on environmental research a couple of months ago and supported OEE's 2030 vision publication. All of these reports are available on our website, etipocean.eu. So next slide, please. So when talking about specific aspects of the CETP for ocean energy, I should mention that that was already mentioned actually, that in our case, regions are very engaged in the sector because the resource is in the coastal region. And, the Basque Country is very active, Bretagne and Pays de la Loire from France, and the UK region. So we would like to highlight the importance of welcoming all regions in the partnership as well, including the UK regions that should be able to take part. And this way, the partnership can really offer a powerful tool to join the forces of ocean energy leaders now and, propel the sector to market. And Karen mentioned this already. ETIP Ocean and OCEANERA-NET are partnering to organize a roundtable with national and regional funding agencies to discuss how to make the best use of the Clean Energy Transition Partnership for Ocean Energy. It's on the 4th of March. So if you're interested, just send me an email. And next slide, please. To just enter a positive note, I wanted to show a couple of graphs from OEE's new Stats and Trends report that will be published in a few days, actually. So this one, the picture is a bit small, but it shows the power production from tidal stream, that it's increasing exponentially as more and more pilot farms are deployed, and the sector indeed hit the 60 gigawatt hour mark last year, despite some delays due to COVID. Next slide, please. For Wave, we don't have production curve yet because it's still at prototype stage, but deployments continue. And in the next couple of years, we will see an increase because developers at the moment are preparing for the next project cycle, and they will start installing full-scale devices and pilot farms as well in the coming years. Next slide, please. So my last slide is a collection of good news from last year. So Nova Innovation expanded the world's first tidal array in Scotland. The Swedish Ministo signed a PPA for the first commercial tidal farm. Wave Piston deployed their wave device in Spain, on the Canary Islands, and CIMEC Atlantis got a lease for a 12 megawatt tidal project in France. And yes, with this good news, I hand it back to Michael. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Very good to see how well embedded and which network there is also around the ERANET. And I think that shows again how important it is that the different technologies that are somehow represented in the clean, or will be represented in the Clean Energy Transition Partnership, will also remain these connections to the larger networks that are existing. I think that's important. And we also saw, I think, quite a kind of task sharing also in these kind of monitoring processes. Where are we? Where have to go next, and so on. That was very interesting. Also very impressive to see this, what you showed at the end, this exponential also growing. As I think on the one hand side, in praxis, the energy coming from this sector will become more and more important for the European global energy system, and also in the field of innovation. I think this will become through this also a much more important topic maybe. And I think personally that it would be very beneficial to have your network somehow integrated in the Clean Energy Transition Partnership, or at least connected to the Clean Energy Transition Partnership. As when you look on the SRIA and the discussions that we had through the SRIA process, it was very clear that somehow we will integrate all the different technological aspects, and there will be enough flexibility also to have each and every of these technologies somehow recognized in the call topics. And on the other hand side, we want to discuss them in a way, or put them together with all the other technologies, to also develop the whole system and to have this system approach on the other hand side in the Clean Energy Transition Partnership. And as this will become, and we will need all the technologies, I think, in Europe to have sufficient renewable energies, this will have to be an important part of this innovation process for the whole system, as it is also becoming an important source of energy in the whole system. So good luck and success for your roundtable. I think that will be very interesting to hear about the outcomes, and if you could really help, and if we can work together to get those partners on board, I think that would be very beneficial. At least I think from the Clean Energy Transition Partnership idea, as I understand it, I think for the partnership that would be a very beneficial, and hopefully also for your network. But now into questions and answers. I have found one thing in the chat that I found quite interesting, and that was that Matera is about marine and maritime technologies, and this was posted. Unfortunately, we don't see the names anymore. That was posted by Corina Muscat Terribile. Thank you for this information. She is part of this network, and maybe that also tells us that if we would treat ocean technologies, energy technologies in the CETP, maybe we should also respect or build this link with the Matera-ERA-NET. Any questions from Fredrik and Gerdi maybe to what we've heard in the latest presentation session?
Well, I have a question, because Karen, you were also talking about Enterprise Europe network that you were connecting with and using to get collaboration going. Can you comment on that?
Yes, so we have, as I said, used Enterprise Europe brokerage events to help promote our calls and to gather the partnerships. It's a good way of pulling on their resources, and then the websites and tools and organisation of meetings and things to bring people together. That usually works best if you can actually piggyback on an event that they're going to be using anyway, delivering anyway. But it's something in future as well I would always look at as could we bring them in to help with the brokerage. And we also encourage when we're promoting the call, we encourage people that are interested to use Enterprise Europe Network services if they're looking for partners as well. We usually use something. We've used Enterprise Europe Network platforms always used B2 Match and things like that to always set up in a sort of online collaboration area. But it's also, we know from working with Enterprise Europe Network colleagues that they have very good connections and access to people all who can help find that in a very focused way. So we encourage companies to use that service as well.
Yeah, so this is you use it to stimulate partnerships for the joint call, if I understand that correctly.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting, very good. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually have a question if there's still some time. Yeah? Go ahead, Karen.
No, I was just going to say I can add another good news story that Nova Innovation have announced that they're going to be powering a new distillery in Scotland to make whiskey. Ocean-powered whiskey.
That's interesting. There's always a link to whiskey. No, I was actually going to ask something completely different, maybe not as interesting, but I'm interested, Lotta, when you described the role of the ERANET in Ocean, and also I'm thinking about the connection to the ETIP and the work you're doing there. How can you elaborate a little bit about why and how the ERANET network and connecting that kind of funding is important for the sector in relation to the funding that comes directly from the Horizon program? Because I imagine, and as we've heard, the projects are usually very big and maybe complex, but there are also complementing factors. Can you elaborate a little bit about the importance of the ERANET network?
Yeah, so as you said, some of the projects indeed are large demonstration projects, and that's why partnering up with a lot of regions or countries, it's beneficial also because the supply chain or the partners within the sector come from different countries. So we think that really joining the force, I mean, one country cannot do everything together. So joining the forces will be needed in order to bring these kind of bigger projects into light as well.
As you are talking about the supply chain, maybe I missed it at the beginning. Maybe you said it already. But I saw that at the beginning you were talking about that a number of SMEs is involved in this supply chain or in this development of the technologies. But is it also large technology companies that are working there? Is it a mix? How is the landscape?
It's really a mix, and I have to say that the supply chain really starts to come from all over Europe. And for example, the developer of one of the leading tidal turbines is from Austria, which is a landlocked country, so it's not always concentrated on the coastal areas. Yeah. But there are a lot of big players as well involved, like NG and SKF and these bigger players as well.
That's really interesting. And what you said now brings me again back to something that we had also already, I think, in an earlier event that I recognize somehow. Very often we look upon how to build a partnership or who would participate in which of the technology areas or so, very much from the perspective what technology is relevant for my national energy system. But sometimes we lose the technology perspective, which I think, I mean, in that case, when you say that, then Austria should be very interested to be part of this network if we have these partners in the supply chain. So I think sometimes we also have to change the angle we look upon the aspects. There's always the energy system aspect related to a country's interest, but also I think we should look on these supply chain aspects and who are the technology partners there that we should be interested to some support, of course, with these activities. Very interesting. Thanks for this learning. Any more questions? Or should we move into the wrap-up session? Where are we
and what our lessons learned, we can still use the time then to discuss further.
I just made a note of the thing about the supply chain, and we could do a bit of work in that as part of our preparation for the new partnership.
Yeah. So let's move over into the last session, which is entitled "Where Are We Now and What Are Our Lessons Learned?" And I guess it will be again Karen to start, or how are you organized?
Yeah, I just had a couple of slides just to sort of sum up, but I'm obviously happy if Patricia and Lotta want to come in as well. Let me just move the slide down, Patricia. Thanks. So yeah, so I mean I've touched on this thing through, but just what I think have been successes of NET specifically. I think we did a lot of good work in the initial ERA-NET to build a base for collaboration and the sort of mutual understanding of each other as funding organisations, but also the challenges in the sector. And again, looking forward, I think that's something that we need to make sure we don't miss as we move into the new partnership, is how we continue to do that work, you know, building the understanding and how we approach things, something to think about. We've had a really strong relationship throughout with Ocean Energy Europe, the ERA Ocean Programme, and now the ETIP. And I have to say also with the Commission, who've been very supportive all the way through. And I think that's really helped us as well. It's a good close community, and it means we can draw on a lot of expertise to help us develop our approach and our calls and reach states. We've also a strong network anyway of companies, but there is a network of companies and researchers that's almost grown up around ERA-NET projects as well, which I think is really good. People like EMEC, the European Marine Energy Centre, the Research Institutes of Sweden, for example, have led on projects which have brought a lot of companies in to work together, and that's been good. I've already touched on the projects. I think we've made some really good contributions to the sector's progression so far. We were successful in our joint calls, and I'm very thankful for the experience of the sort of national programmes on that. And I think that ties into this sort of credibility thing. I have a suspicion that when we started with Ocean ERA-NET, not everybody thought it would work, because it was a very young sector and a new partnership and a completely new coordinator. So it was a challenge, but I think we've done really well, and I think it's built up our credibility as a partnership, but it's also, I think, helped to build up the credibility in the sector and the ability to absorb funding and put it to good use. And to do that in a way that's complementary to Horizon 2020. One of the things we have is quite a good low-cost operating model, but that can be a disadvantage as well when it comes to some of the activities. So I think there's a balance there. And what's really important throughout this, and even more so now, is the support that the European Union has shown for the ocean energy sector. A lot of work, effort put into the Ocean Energy Forum, the whole sort of blue growth, blue economy area, the new offshore renewable strategy. And I think the European Union, more than anybody, than any of the member states, has picked up how important this sector is and helped it to grow. So that's been a big help to us. If you can move the slides down, Patricia. Challenges. We've had a few. It was challenging when some of the national agencies pulled out from when we moved into the co-fund. We sort of missed that input and that support. That was largely due to the sort of policy context at the time, but hoping that might start to come back now. we have tried, but never quite succeeded at engaging more countries and regions in the ERA-NET. It's quite difficult to do that once you've started, because timescales are always a challenge. We did talk to various people and a number of international people as well. We had some contact with Chile and Argentina, and particularly with Canada, but it was really difficult to bring them in, and the timescales they needed 2 years to think about it before they could actually commit, and we didn't have 2 years to wait. So challenges, the co-fund financial model, you've probably heard this before, is a bit of a challenge in terms of how you organise the money within the projects. I suspect it will continue to be a challenge. Things like, as well, as a sort of fairly small ERA-NET, we had to build a new website for both projects because the partner in the first project wasn't in the second project, and we had to build a new website and all the application portal behind that, which is really quite expensive. And I hope when we move to CETP we can get that common tools for everybody to use and stop wasting money, which would be really good. But again, the lack of having a sort of online platform, I think, has inhibited our knowledge exchange activity, and it'll be good in the future to have that kind of opportunity, I think. We do have some issues with people resources. It's difficult to get the real commitment of time, and the thing that's caused us a lot of work and a lot of problems, but we're getting them, but we're solving them. Particularly last year is project monitoring and the delays in projects due to COVID and other things. There's a lot of effort has to go into supporting those projects to sort out their issues and keep going, but we're getting there. They're still all on course, so it's good. And I think just one more slide, I think, Patricia. Yeah, it was just touching on sort of the opportunities in the future. And again, this is looking at how we fit into the bigger picture in the new partnership. As we've seen, the sector is progressing really well. We're very, very close to big breakthroughs now in the tidal sector, and wave will follow on. It's going to take more time, but it will follow on. And I think looking forward, we can start to look more at looking at supporting arrays, amazing. And scaling up the sector, as well as continuing the new development, because there's still a lot of scope in the newer devices that are being developed, new approaches. I think we need to look at the scope for cooperation with other offshore renewables. I think that will become increasingly important as we scale up. Sharing knowledge and technology, but also potentially sharing infrastructure as well. Integration into energy systems is important for ocean energy, because we need access to the grid to sell electricity. But one thing that's come up as something really important in the work that's been done in this sector is how important ocean energy can be to balancing the grid. Because it's, offshore wind and solar are less predictable, and tidal in particular is very predictable, so it can actually contribute base load to balance up the renewables and the grid. We've got a project that's working on that right now, funded by ERA-NET, doing a lot of detailed analysis of markets and the value of that to the grid. So looking forward to seeing the results of that. There's also a lot of opportunities in niche market as well, so not just supplying power to the grid, but also powering specific things, from everything from aquaculture, which is an old favourite, to data centres. In Orkney we've been putting data centres in the sea. So there's lots of opportunities for ocean energy, and it is definitely a global market, and a market that Europe needs to keep the lead on. So looking forward to the future. I think that's all.
Thanks, Karen. I think that's very interesting aspects also that you raised now on the role that ocean energy can play in the overall system. what you were talking about before in my head made many connections to what we tried to present last Friday with our platform idea, and which I think should be a leading idea for the Clean Energy Transition Partnership. Because, as you pointed out, a very interesting aspect to me was that some of the agencies, national agencies particularly, could help the regions or the regional agencies by in this collaboration. And I think that also leads to me very much to this idea that, okay, it's about creating a platform where, and you were talking about the resources that everyone needs to put into it and so on. And of course, there will also always be an amount of resources that everyone that wants to participate and benefit from the partnership will have to put into it. But to provide a platform that makes it as easy as possible and as seamless as possible and as resource saving as possible for everyone to participate. You mentioned that, for instance, I mean, that if we have one application tool or something that everyone can use, and everyone needs to provide their own and so on. So there are a lot of synergies that I think we could gain, and by providing this platform and make it easier for everyone. Also, what you mentioned, very interesting, that you have this strong attempt to reach out also beyond Europe. And we have heard from other networks also before in the events before that there are also from other networks already links to partners from outside Europe. And here also, I think the platform could help to develop or provide synergies also in this, how to do this, how to streamline those processes, and how to involve those kind of partners. Very interesting aspects to me. Maybe Fredrik Gerdi, comments from your side or aspects that you want to highlight?
Well, Fredrik, I think I'm muted.
Oh, no, we can hear you, Gerdi.
Okay, very good. Well, what I take from what you've been saying is that this is a well-organized sector, young sector, with a lot of growth and where a lot of things are happening. So I think that if there's enthusiasm in your network to continue working together in the way you've worked, this is very important for our Clean Energy Transition Partnership, and we can really have synergies here. That's for sure. I was also interested to hear about the links that you have with other countries outside Europe, just like Michael was saying. I was wondering, but it's not for the wrap up, but there are some detailed questions that I still have. maybe pass on to Fredrik.
Thanks, Gerdi. Now I was also curious about your detailed questions, but maybe we'll hear them later on. I wonder, one thing that listening to the conversation and also to all the presentations, clearly, I mean, ocean energy, there is synergies also with other power production technologies. And how is this sort of affecting the networks, or are there ongoing dialogues about this? For instance, there's a lot of, we have a lot of wind power coming in offshore, and together with that, we also have also a discussion globally around offshore solar and other aspects, and of course integrating them in relation to, of course, grid infrastructure and other things. Is this a topic that is becoming relevant or that is under attention in your network, or how do you work with that?
I suppose I can answer that. There is some synergies building, and we're working at a set plan level, engaging with the other set plan groups, and to see how we can work on some of those cross-cutting issues, say on grid integration, and for offshore in particular, consenting is a significant cross-cutting issue. So certainly there are developments in other sectors which are, well ahead of where we are as an emerging technology. But what I think the main thing we should do is, I suppose, grab onto those coattails. So look at, okay, how are the supply chains building for those sectors, and how can we use them to our advantage? How is the offshore grid integration happening? And again, how can we use that to our advantage? So look at how these bigger sectors which are progressing at the moment, like fixed offshore wind, and in time potentially floating offshore wind, and how we can leverage and benefit from the infrastructure work that's happening, but also the knowledge for some of those technologies, because the requirements would, say, for instance, between a floating wave technology and a floating tidal technology for a floating wind technology would often be equivalent, like the mooring requirements, say, for instance. So how can we, again, work with those sectors to learn how to do these things? And back to that project I mentioned earlier on, the Open project, it is about learning from other sectors, the sectors which are established but also evolving. So it's about growing our knowledge in that area, because again, while there are a number of larger companies in our networks, it's primarily SMEs. I hope that answers that for you, Frederick.
Thank you, Patricia. Yeah, that's a very good answer, and I think it's very interesting to know. I assume, that like in many of the other sectors we work with, this is another proof of why sector integration and cross-sectoral collaboration is important. And of course, this is something, at least I would assume, we will have more opportunities with in the new partnership compared to in OCEANERA-NET, as we have been working until now.
Yeah, I agree. And I suppose what, in particular for this sector, my hope would be that it doesn't get left behind, because it is emerging and it is developing, and there's significant potential in future for it, and that it's not parked while we develop other sectors. I think we need to keep moving the development of it, because as Karen points out, there's significant complements that this sector can bring, and it will help us to solve issues, say, for instance, on the grid balancing, then, more so than other sectors. So I think we need to ensure that we don't lose the momentum that has been built in supporting this sector, that we continue to develop it and support it. And as Karen has mentioned, the European Commission in particular has been a significant support in this area, even when some national jurisdictions have, say, changed how they plan to support it or progress it. So I think we need to keep the momentum moving, ensuring that it doesn't get lost amongst the larger kind of technologies that will perhaps fulfill our requirements in the immediate term, but maybe not in the longer term.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Step by step, the discussion is coming to an end. I would like to share a little, or shade an eye on Nicholas. Do we have something from the chat? I don't think so at the moment. Seems quite silent. Anything from the podium that you still want to mention, or any additional questions? If not, then I would say, wow, that was really, again, a very interesting presentation today. Opened up my kind of mind and thinking again, because I was not very much aware of the things that you're doing in that sector. Very, very interesting. Personally, I have to say, Karen, that's really something I'm a little bit disappointed, because in the preparation meeting, you have shown this wonderful shelf with all your gin bottles, and you promised that you would prepare that for the meeting when we didn't see anything from it. No, sorry for kidding. I don't want it to shock you. What I wanted to say, basically, there it is. No, I wanted to say thank you very, very much for preparing all this. We know that it is a lot of work. You've done a great job. Thanks so much for this and sharing your insights with us.
and the whole audience. I think, again, we had a big number of participants as every week, also this week. The ones that missed your show can watch it on the YouTube channel also afterwards, so it will be available there. So the work that you have done can create a lot of impact, I think, and definitely it was an important input for our discussions that we will have to design the Clean Energy Transition Partnership. Basically, I think what I've learned personally is we really have to look a little bit on how we can support the regions to come on board, particularly there where they are the ones that bring in the topics like in your field, because we don't want definitely not to miss the partners and not the important topics. Thank you very much for this week. Looking forward to our next week's event. Nicolas, what are we going to have next week? Just join and tell me. I don't have the schedule. that was a bad question. Now
oh, it's going to be best of 3 in BioEner.
Oh yes, BioEner. That's okay. Another completely other sector again. Very good. So everyone out there, please join us again next week for bioenergy as a topic for our next event. Thank you very much. Have a good weekend. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks,
Everyone.
guys. Bye-bye.